So you are all probably wondering what I've been up to these last few months. Well, aside from being up to my neck in work, I've delved into an endless pit of arcane lore and convoluted storytelling. Oh, also, I've been playing Elden Ring in my spare time. After playing this game for over 200 hours across several playthroughs, I've amassed almost all of the armor sets in the game. Having used a good chunk of them, I will be ranking them in a somewhat new manner for Design Dungeon. First and foremost is, of course, their design. Are these armor sets visually striking and thematic? Next is their flavor text. Does it flesh out the world or characters associated with the armor? Or is it just a description of their materials? Next is their adaptability. Can parts of the set be used with others, or do they clash? Last, of course, is their stats. Nobody likes armor that looks cool but has awful stats and you can't transmute it. From these scores, I'll rank them on a scale of F to S rank, Devil May Cry style, minus the triple S. We don't get that high with any of them, sadly. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video and rank some Elden Ring drip. The first pieces of drip a player comes in contact with are the starting sets. So naturally, they're being ranked first, except for the Wretch, which, let's be honest, is the obligatory start with nothing but a bonk stick class. I can't rank a loincloth, okay? The Astrologer set, design-wise, is very strong in its concept. I like the pouch and sextant on the belt to sell that this is a sorcerer who studies the stars. The flavor text is particularly strong too, since it relates to one of the ancient factions of the setting. Unfortunately, its stats are not that great, especially in the early game. And if you want the hood to stay up, you're going to need a headpiece that's compatible with it. Overall, it's an okay set, if only for its design.
Crazy!
The classic bandit look. Aside from being very fashionable, it's lacking in flavor, but you can easily pair the head or chest piece with a wide array of black sets, so it's very adaptable. Its stats are marginally better than the Astrologer sets, having more physical protection than magical. Overall, it's an alright set. It's probably going to be the first medium set you get, but you'll quickly switch away to a new piece of armor as soon as you get it.
Crazy!
The Champion set, better known as the Hero set, is the go-to Barbarian set. It's linked to the Badlands and by extension Nephelia and Horlu. Like the Bandit set, it pairs well with a lot of black armor sets. Of course, the chest piece is great for shirtless builds, though obviously it does not have a lot in the way of protection for its weight class. So it's another piece for fashion.
Brutal!
The Blue Cloth set, also known as the Warrior set, it's themed around a legendary warrior that sealed away the God of Rot. It's rather distinct, and you could probably pair it with some other armor sets, but it's pretty mid for the starting sets. Much like the Bandit set, you're going to be swapping it out for just about any new piece of armor you're going to come across. But not every piece of armor.
Brutal!
Oh look, another black set. That means I'm going to give it good ranks for its adaptability and design. But that's not all. It has some good flavor text too, considering that this is basically Inquisitor armor. The only knock against it is its middling stats for its weight class. Again, you're probably gonna swap it out for something better. Or you could just swap out some of the other pieces like the arms and legs for something a bit better when you get them.
Brutal!
Aside from the Berserk reference, there's not much to the Prisoner set. I mean, there's the implication that the Prisoner is a Carian noble, but really, its stats suck. The headpiece is too heavy for its stats, and the rest of it can just be tossed aside once you get better armor.
Crazy!
The Prophet set comes in two flavors. The one that actually stands out is Corrin's set due to its more fashionable wheel. The lore behind it is basically the strongest part of the set, considering the prophecy of the Erd Tree burning and how that ties into the events of the game. But aside from that, it's really bad. Switch it out as soon as possible. Really, the Prophet set is just not good.
Crazy.
The Land of Reed set is, of course, the Samurai class's starting armor, and it's fairly decent for a starting game set. It lasts pretty long into the early game while also giving a good insight into the Land of Reeds itself. That said, you're going to be limited in armors if you want to keep the samurai aesthetic going throughout your playthrough. There are only a handful of them that go with this, though there are some red-colored sets, so that balances out a little bit.
Brutal.
What the Vagabond Knight set lacks in flavor, it makes up for in style. The popped-up helmet, the rusty breastplate over a cross-patterned gambeson, all tied together with a cape. Nice. Also, it has some really solid stats. Honestly, it's an early game knight set, and you'll likely need to actually unequip the sword or the halberd in order to medium roll at first.
Brutal.
Next up are some of the sets you can buy near the start of the game. They don't really fit into any other category, so this will likely be the quickest part. Ah yes, the slot filler set. On its own, the chain set is boring. However, its stats and early availability make it the go-to second armor for a lot of players. Its adaptability is great since most foot soldier, and knight sets have elements that go well with its pieces. Mainly the chest piece and sometimes the head piece.
Crazy.
The Iron set is another early game armor set that is probably the better option than the chain armor once you get to the Weeping Peninsula and have a few levels on you. It's overall the better looking set, and it has solid stats for where it is, unless you happen to get some soldier or knight gear drops. That said, the helmet and bracers go with just about any set with the right metal. It also pairs well with pieces of the Kaiden set given their shared Nordic designs.
Brutal.
The Knight set is available as soon as you reach the Round Table Hold. What it lacks for in personality, it makes up for in raw stats. You can absolutely wear this set throughout the early to mid game with no problems. The other Knight sets do offer more specific defenses, and in some cases they surpass it. But overall, it is a very solid armor set.
Brutal.
The foot soldier sets differ depending on their area. Most of them relate to a specific shard bearer, but not all of them. Most of them share the same rank, save for one. The Godric foot soldier. I really like the hat. The rest of the set's kinda mid though. The Radahn foot soldier. Oh boy, do I love me some awful fashion for some minor immunity buffs. Leyndell foot soldier. Again, like the helm more than the rest of the set. You can pair it with a Leyndell Knight set to get a good conquistador look going, though. Rhea Lucaria foot soldier. This is the opposite now. I like the chest piece, but not the helmet. Mausoleum foot soldier. Never got this one, never cared that I missed it. It's the most boring of the Mausoleum sets. Halig Tree foot soldier. This set got boosted solely by the bit of flavor about Miquella blessing even the foot soldiers. Aside from that, this is basically a combination of the Leyndell and Rhea Lucaria look.
Brutal.
These are the armor sets dropped from the soldiers throughout the lands between. They're like the foot soldier sets, but actually good. There are also unique soldiers in certain areas, so I'm including them in this place too. Memes aside, the Godric soldier set is relatively well-rounded against early game threats. The surcoat piece has some nice flavor concerning Godric's desire to emulate his predecessor Godfrey, so that's good.
Brutal.
I'm going to make one thing perfectly clear. I love Magic Knight or Spellblade aesthetics, so the Rhea Lucaria soldier is really cool to me. The Rhea Lucaria Cuckoo Knight fluff is also adequate. The stats reflect its magic spec of the faction, and it also goes really well with some of the other Magic Knight sets.
Brutal.
The Radon soldier has a very unique look, solid flavor text about Radon and his troops, and it has the highest fire resist out of the main soldier sets. Good armor.
Brutal.
The Landell soldier set is kind of mediocre in comparison to the others. The helmet isn't all that unique, it only pairs with the other gold sets. Heck, its lightning resistance isn't even its strongest non-physical resistance.
Crazy.
Oh hey, another Mausoleum set that lacks in overall stats because there's no helmet. I know that's a flavor thing, but it's not really specializing in resistances either. Plus, it's a rare drop and not really all that worth getting.
Crazy.
The Halig Tree Soldier set is one for the Faith builds with its helm sporting a 2-point buff to Faith. Plus, the set also sports some high holy resistance too. Overall, it works well for anyone who wants to do a Paladin loadout and doesn't want to use the Landell Soldier set.
Brutal.
The Kaiden set is one of the other soldier sets in Limgrave that has a unique look resembling Viking armor. It's not as powerful as the major soldier sets, but it's lighter and you generally can get it earlier than most sets, save for maybe the Godric soldier set.
Brutal.
The Exile set is comparable to the other soldier armor, but with relatively less flavor. It does make up for it with a unique look, but the red shawl needs to be worked around with because it's hard to pair with other headpieces and look good.
Brutal.
The All-Knowing and Erdtree surcoats could also be put into this category, and they're fine. They mix well with the Totally Not Solaire helm.
Brutal.
Not entirely sure why I have this here, but here it is. The Mushroom set is for all your poison-based needs. It has a massive boost to immunity and focus, with some good non-magic resist for anything that's not fire. The Mushroom Crown variant also has a Kindred of Rot buff that can be procced for extra damage too. But good luck getting that because it's in the Lake of Rot.
Brutal.
The sheer fact that I forgot about the Marionette Soldier set no less than 3 times when making this review shows just how underwhelming a set it actually is.
Dead weight.
The Knight sets. These are the big boy armor sets. They'll take you anywhere from early game and beyond. Heck, some of them are even good at end game too. Well, it's the earliest Knight set you can potentially get. The Godric Knight set is probably the hardest, considering it can only be reliably dropped by the one Knight at the Gatefront Ruins. And stat-wise, it's rather lacking in comparison to its peers, much like its Shardbearer.
Brutal.
As I mentioned before, I really like Magic Knights, and the Cuckoo Knight set is one of them. The lore behind the Knights, aspiring to be their own version of Glintstone sorcerers, is cool, and the fact that they do incorporate actual magic in their moveset is great. Stat-wise, it's a better version of the Raya Lucaria Soldier set, and it has a reliable farming spot that actually makes it viable in mid-game and onwards.
Brutal.
The Redmane Knight set is great. It takes the Redmane Soldier set's design and mixes it with the Godric Knight's model. But it also has a really cool shield that gives the Cuckoo Knight a run for its money. That said, it is a pain to farm, but not as bad as the Godric Knight set.
Awesome.
The Landell Knight set is the go-to Lightning Paladin set. Good physical and lightning defense combined with a unique helmet model and flavor to boot. Plus, it's stupidly easy to get on the Altus Plateau. It's not if you'll get the full set, it's when.
Awesome.
When I first got the chest piece from a Mausoleum Knight, I made it a fixture in my character's build for a good time. The Deathbird wings give it a lot of flavor, and actually make up for the lack of helmet on the set. The tough part is finding something to match, which, considering all the Black Hoods out there and the Royal Main set, it's really more of a choice paralysis sort of thing, but I'm sure you'll manage to find something like that.
Awesome!
The Gelmir Knight set is a statistically watered-down version of the Red Main set for people who can't be bothered to grind for it. That said, it's stylish in its own right, and the lore behind the Knights of Gelmir is interesting at least.
Brutal!
The Haligtree Knight set is the other Paladin set that can be found late in the game. Fortunately, its high holy resist will help in late game fights. Just like its soldier counterpart, the helm comes with a higher faith boost, though it should be noted that the helm actually can be found on a corpse rather than actually dropped by the knights. So for the rest of it, you're going to have to deal with some very tough knights to get at it.
Awesome!
Now we're getting into the unique sets, and the Cleanerot Knights sure are unique. Their set has a broken Valkyrie theme going for it, mixed with a helmet that resembles a cage holding back the rot roiling within the knight. It's got the highest weight class in the overall knight category, but it has the defense to back it up.
Awesome!
Of course, we have the Carrier Knight set, which has to be one of my favorite sets, period. The flavor and look of a small elite order of knights in service to a noble family is cool. They have several weapons dedicated to them, and 2 different staves for 2 types of magic that was produced by the Carrion royal family. Yeah, I'm not actually including the Carrion Regal Scepter, that's a boss thing. Yeah, the Carrion family kinda gets some preferential treatment by From Software.
Stylish!
The Banished Knight set really shouldn't be grouped with these other sets because it's in a far higher weight class. As such, it's head and shoulders above the other knight sets in terms of defense and poise. It also has 2 helmet and chest variations that are relatively hard to find unless you know where you're looking. It's got a metal type that's fairly common, so it pairs well with most armor sets if you just want the helmet or something. That said, you're going to be going up against some tough enemies if you're in the early game and you want it.
Awesome!
These are the unsorted fodder sets that I've seen speckled throughout the Lands Between. The Commoner set is rather interesting in its design, but that's really all it has going for it. Doesn't have much in the way of flavor or stats. I'd actually kind of include it with Gostock as being an NPC set, but these are also enemies, and let's be honest, Gostock is more of an opponent unless you decide to do the Netheli Lu quest.
Crazy!
Yes, the ruddy scraps of clothing you see on the wandering aristocrats that dot the early to mid-game areas. Suffice to say, it's not very impressive, save for the unique headpieces.
Crazy!
The Vulgar Militia set is, for its weight, not super impressive, and its appearance is just plain ruddy. I mean, the chest piece isn't awful, but it's not good looking either. It's almost as bad as...
I'll knock you out, let you off the road. Steal your shoes from off your feet, and then highway man, when I make it.
Crazy!
The Guardian set is dropped from the guards around minor Erd trees and along the branch walkways in Lane Dell. The appearance is a little meh, but you can build around it. Especially the full bloom torso, which buffs HP flasks at the cost of being weak to fire. Definitely something worth considering, and could fit into a druid loadout or something like that.
Brutal!
The Guilty set isn't used by enemies so much as it is worn by those poor souls crucified all over Limgrave. You'll find all but the hood from Patch's boss fight area, and that's pretty much the most notable thing about it.
Dead weight!
There's a Midsomner joke to be made here, but I don't know what it is since I didn't see the movie. Honestly, this set is actual garbage. The only notable thing about it is how many variants there are of the headpiece.
Crazy!
The Albinuric set has got to be one of the most standout sets in the game. Like most other sets, it's mainly for the headpiece. Though to be honest, it's not even because of the +4 arcane set. No, it's mainly for the memes. Seriously, there are two types of Let's Players for this game. The ones that will pick out whatever armor suits their build or look, and the ones that put on the Albinuric mask on and slap their character on every thumbnail of their video. I know you do it. Don't lie.
Awesome!
The Page and High Page sets are really good looking armor that go well with a lot of different headpieces and legwear. Their flavor is very basic, and the High Page set is rather lacking in stats. However, the regular Page set has very good defenses and poise for only weighing 9 pounds, which makes it really good for people who want to light roll or use the blue dancer charm without being stark naked.
Crazy!
The Perfumers, a surprisingly well fleshed out minor faction. They started out as a bunch of healers, but the Shattering made them into warriors and probably war criminals. The basic Perfumer set is essentially a slightly souped up Magus set. High energy defense, but low physical defense while also having solid resistances. It's also on the low end of medium weight, so you can potentially light roll if your equip load is high enough. The flavor is pretty solid, giving an overview of the Perfumers as a whole. The hood functions a lot like the Astrologers, where certain headpieces work with it. And, in fact, I forgot to put on the proper headpiece and use the Astrologer's underhood with it. So, yeah, fun little fact there.
Brutal!
The Traveling Perfumer set is objectively the better Perfumer set. It's more well-rounded with its defenses and resistances, save for immunity. Its flavor refers to some unsung hero who claims to treat the downtrodden of the lands between. As for adaptability, let's just say the hat is the go-to Bloodborne cosplay armor piece.
Brutal!
The Depraved Perfumer set is somehow more villainous than the regular Perfumer set. It's stronger than the Traveling Perfumer, but weighs more. That said, its look isn't exactly my cup of tea, and it's not nearly as adaptable as the Traveling set. I'd only recommend it if you're going for a Perfumer loadout and don't mind mid-rolling.
Brutal!
The Omen Kellers are a special breed of perfumers with their own bit of twisted lore behind them. Stat-wise, this is the sturdiest of the Perfumer sets in terms of physical damage negation and poise, though the resistances and energy defense stats are lower to balance it out. What makes this set particularly unique is the Omen's Merc mask that provides a +2 buff to strength. It pairs particularly well with samurai sets given how it resembles a Hanya mask. All around a good set if you don't mind the Perfumer look.
Brutal!
The Ancestral Followers are a minor faction found in a handful of places. They can mainly be found underground around the Siofra River and in a few places above ground. The first set is the standard equipment used by the regular Ancestral Followers, and it sucks.
Wait.
I mean, you can kind of get a barbarian look going, but it's completely overshadowed by... Now this is the better Ancestral Follower set. The armor dropped by the shamans has better flavor, appearance, and stats. What's more is that the headpiece strengthens the Ancestral Infant Head's item. So if you're dead set on using that thing, you better wear the headpiece.
Brutal!
The Nox are another underground faction that can mainly be found in the Eternal Cities. All of their armor sport the lore that they were banished there by the Greater Will. And the sets are also a tad repetitive, but they have subtle differences that set them apart. The Nox Swordstra set is something of a middle child in the Nox sets. It has middling physical and energy defenses, but strangely has the highest poise out of the trio.
Brutal!
The Nox Monk set boasts the highest physical defense of the Nox sets, but strangely has the lowest poise. It is the lightest of the three sets, so it's got that going for it, but overall, it's kind of lacking compared to the other two when it comes to its appearance.
Brutal!
The Night Maiden set is probably the most visually striking of the Nox sets, with its standout headpiece. Stat-wise, it's kinda meh. It has marginally higher energy defense, but the lowest physical defense out of the three. Again, the headpiece is definitely the one thing that's letting it go places.
Brutal.
These are the sets mainly used by mage enemies that aren't NPCs or bosses. Generally, they don't have much physical protection and have high energy protection, with the advantage of being very lightweight. But there are some sets that stand out here and there. The baseline mage set would be the Rare Lucarian Sorcerer sets. Now, the stats of the sets are frankly pitiful, save for the headpieces, which are many and each have special properties and bits of lore concerning the person they depict. The Karolos crown is the basic one that boosts by 3 with a 9% penalty to stamina. The Twin Sage crown doubles this boost, but also applies a 9% penalty to health as well. The Witch's crown belongs to Selen and boosts into Arcane by 3, but the stamina penalty is a hefty 18%. I missed the Olvidius crown in my playthrough, but frankly, it's the worst on account of only having the +3 int bonus, but has a 10% HP penalty. Having enough HP is the difference between living and getting one-shotted, so I wouldn't recommend that crown at all. Go with the Twin Sage if you absolutely must take the health penalty.
Awesome.
The Lazuli Sorceress set is a variation used by the Gishes of the Academy. They specialize in carrying sorceries, and their gear reflects that. The armor has higher physical defense, and the crown buffs into Dex by 3 with an 18% HP penalty. Ah, man, talk about a glass cannon.
Awesome.
I'm not particularly fond of the Battle Mage's set design, nor its stats, which somehow have lower physical defense than the Lazuli set, but more poise. The one piece kind of worth using is the Haima Glintstone crown if you're going for a strength int build. The piece buffs int and strength by 2%, but has a 10% FP penalty. It's not really as compelling as the other sets, and the Battle Mage spells are far more interesting than the set itself.
Brutal.
The Errant Sorcerer set definitely has the Wandering Monk look down pat. But of course, how is the crown? Well, it's a lot like the Battle Mage set. It buffs int and endurance by 2, but also has a 10% FP penalty, and you need every point of FP if you want to be casting spells regularly.
Brutal.
The Juvenile Scholar set is only half a set, lacking in both leg and arm pieces, so its overall stats are not very much there. That set is pretty neat looking, so you've got that. Maybe use the hat for something?
Brutal.
The Flame Monks are another minor faction that can be found in parts of Lernia, Mount Gelmir, and predominantly on the mountaintops of the Giants. The only exception are the Black Flame Monks, who are tucked away in odd corners of the land between. For being grouped with a lot of medium armor, the Fire Monk set is more comparable to the heavier Knight sets, which is interesting because you can potentially get it as early as Lernia if you know where to look. The set is moderately adaptable with any other that uses a lot of red or orange in it, and the flavor text is fairly solid.
Brutal.
The Fire Prelate set is a hefty set. It's the second heaviest set with the stats to go with it. Of course, it has high defense and fire defense. The flavor text is really good, especially the helm, which makes up for its appearance and lack of versatility for the chest piece.
Brutal.
A recolor of the Fire Monk set, the Black Flame Monk set is basically a slight downgrade too. While it's a bit more versatile with its coloration, the flavor text isn't much to write home about, except that they're basically simps for the Black Flame. I wonder if they even know about the Glowmite Queen.
Brutal.
On to possibly the longest section, the NPC gear list. This counts invaders, summons, shopkeepers, and other NPCs throughout the lands. Albric's set is absolutely carried by its appearance. Unfortunately, its stats are basically mid-tier mage armor, But the only unique thing about them is that they boost Thorn sorceries per piece of the set. I think they got buffed, but they're not as good as the other options out there, so it's not that great. It just looks cool.
Brutal.
The All-Knowing set is dropped by Gideon Ofnir after his boss fight, which normally would put him in the boss section, but here we are. Stat-wise, it's not super impressive for how late you get it, but boy is it stylish. The ear and eye motifs are great, and it's a real pity the armor's dull metal clashes with just about every other armor set. You could maybe mix the helm with something else, but it really won't work.
Brutal.
Azure's Glintstone set is a high-tier mage set with high energy defense and, half-decent physical defense. The real game changer is the headpiece that increases Comet Azure's already massive damage by 15%, along with Glintstone Comet Shard and Glintstone Comet by 10%, at the cost of increasing sorcery FP costs by 15%. But if you're running Comet Azure, you probably have the infinite FP crystal tier, so that's probably not an issue for you. It's a good endgame set, but it's not my favorite.
Brutal.
The Beast Champion set belongs to the NPC Bernal, and can only be gained towards the end after fighting him in an out-of-the-way corner of Farum Azula. That said, it is quite possibly one of the best armor sets in the game. It has high defense, a whopping 72 poise, and considerable resistances. Of course, it's really heavy, but you could switch out the helmet for a better-looking one. Which is sad because thematically the helm is good, but it's the ugliest part of the set. Oh, and make sure you alter it so that the cape's showing. It has a wonderful cape.
Awesome.
The choice of every Guts cosplayer, Blythe's set is also a very solid endgame armor. While it's not as sturdy as the Beast Champion set, it is a bit lighter, so it balances out. Of course, the flavor is good considering who owns the armor, and it pairs well with most other sets.
Awesome.
The Bloodsoaked set isn't very good, but the versatility on the bandages are great. The official attire has some good ominous flavor, but it's not super notable since, aside from the whole NPC invasion that drops the pizza cutter,
Crazy.
I don't care how good it is. I don't care how cool it looks. No armor set is worth the painful process of grinding albinuric archers for it. This set is not worth it.
Dead weight.
The Bull Goat set has very striking design, but good luck pairing it with anything and not looking weird. You get it in one of the Volcano Manor invasions. It sports the highest poise and physical defense in the base game, but also the highest weight. So definitely stack up on endurance and use the Great Jar Charm. Maybe even stack it with the Erdry Favor +2 as well, just so you can properly use anything else with it.
Brutal.
The Consort set is dropped by Tanith at the very end of Volcano Manor, after killing Rykard. The only piece that's really good is the mask, which gives you a +1 to Dex. It looks great too, and goes with any set that has gold metal in it.
Brutal.
The Deathbed set isn't really a set. It's a chess piece and a really bad one. It gives the HP regen effect for allies. Its passive used to draw enemy aggro to the wearer for some reason, and Flail is used to beam you over the head when using its charged R2. This has since been patched out though, and erased any remarkable parts of this piece with it.
Crazy.
Despite its middling stats and adaptability, I really like the Drake Knight set. Its red and black draconic theme is wonderful. The flavor of belonging to knights who took part in Dragon Communion really drives home how the armor reflects their goal of emulating dragons. Pity you get it super late in the game at Farum Azula.
Brutal.
The Eccentric set is worn by Witch Hunter Jaren, the guy who announces the Radon Festival and then is never seen again unless you complete Salen's quest and side with her. I don't really like the set.
It's ugly, its stats are middling for its weight, and the only redeeming bit is the flavor text explaining why you showed up for the Rodan Festival in the first place.
Crazy.
Definitely more of a lore piece than a full-on armor set. Fia's set sheds light on some of her backstory, what with her being in exile, and it also describes how thin the fabric is when you go in for one of her embraces. The hood is particularly adaptable for a lot of black armor sets like the Night Cavalry or Mausoleum sets.
Brutal.
The Finger Maiden set is an unremarkable set for an unremarkable NPC summon.
Crazy.
The set of the ever-radiant T-posing gold mask, the stats of the armor are rather unimpressive, but it looks good. With a lot of sets, the mask has a special effect. It boosts Golden Order incantations, which are super underpowered in comparison to others. So yeah, it's a crucial pick for anybody who wants to use those. Also, the gold bangles look really cool.
Awesome.
I love the Hoslo set. It's super ornate and flashy. The flavor on the two helmets reflect both of the brothers of House Hoslo, and it has pretty solid stats for late game. The only issue is it's not going to pair too well with others because of its really shiny alloy, so you're gonna have to fiddle with it if you want to mix anything with it.
Awesome.
The House Mariah set isn't really all that much, all things considered. It's only got 2 pieces, and the only notable part is the mask that gives a 1-point arcane buff. The lore about how the house was sickly inbred and their most recent era turned into a millennia simp is pretty funny, though.
Crazy.
The leather set's commonly worn by good old trusty Patches. If you fight him early on and kill him, he'll drop most of the set and you'll have some decent armor in the early game. Otherwise, it's not that great and pretty much there for any rogues who don't want to dress in all black. Or that one Geralt cosplayer.
Brutal.
Lionel said it's got good physical resist and poise. It is lighter, but overall overshadowed by the Bull Goat set. Plus, I don't really care for it. It does give us some insight into this champion of Fia, but that's really all it's got going. I mean, look, it's obviously trying to evoke the Onion Knights, the Katarina Knights from Dark Souls 1, but it just looks ridiculous. More ridiculous than those other sets.
Brutal.
My favorite Pure Mage set, Lusat's armor, it has a surprising amount of physical defense, with good energy defense as well. Like Azure's, it boosts the damage of certain sorceries, those being Stars of Ruin by 15%, Star Shower and Glintstone Stars by 10%, and it has the FP cost penalty of 15%. Also, the giant blue eye headpiece looks incredible.
Awesome.
Noble set isn't particularly remarkable in its main stats, but like many so far, the headpieces are wonderful. The Navy Hood gives a 1-point buff to Mind, and it goes well with a lot of magic-themed sets, while the Crimson Hood gives a buff to Vigor and sports some lore on Roderica. Suffice to say, if you don't have a headpiece decided, you can always go for these two.
Brutal.
The Nomadic Merchant set is one you really have to go out of your way with if you don't want to do the Lord of Chaos ending, which is why I don't have it. It's got middling stats for what it is, and the only piece I ever get to see used regularly is the Chapeau. It does have a good lore entry in it, though, so there's that.
Crazy.
Another set I didn't get is the Omen set, and for good reason. It belongs to the
loathsome Dung Eater.
It's a hideous armor set that has really good defense and poise. Naturally, it's extremely heavy, but it clashes with just about anything. Though it does have a damage buff to the Omen Baron items, so that encourages you to use the whole thing. If you really want the set, go get it, but I won't envy the task of going through the Shunning Grounds to get at it.
Brutal.
The Preceptor set is fairly solid for a mid-game mage set if you know how to get it quickly. Most people just use the body for a Jedi cosplay or a samurai look, The hat does sport a +3 mind buff with a 9% stamina penalty, so don't sleep on that. There's also the Mask of Confidence variant that has some good lore and buffs Arcane by 3.
Brutal.
The semi-poster boy for Elden Ring, and for good reason. The Raging Wolf set is a good-looking armor set drawing on the heavy Norse influence that the game has going for it. And in universe, the armor is that of the first Tarnished at the Round Table. Its stats are solid for its weight class, and it synergizes well with a lot of armor sets, again, like the Caden and the Iron set.
Awesome.
Visually, the Raptor set is a modified version of the Bandit set, and the changes are quite something. First, we have a hood with lore regarding how the Raptors emulate the Deathbirds, and then there's the chest piece itself, which also has a boost to jump attacks. There are some really good jump attack builds out there, and they use this stacked with a clawed talisman to make them sing.
Brutal.
While not the most pretty set, the Ronin set is the most sturdy samurai-styled armor set. You can only get it by killing Shabriri, who's taken possession of Yura. The set's flavor has info on both the Land of Reeds and Yura's love of a woman who is implied to be Elatnara, who you kill earlier on. Of course, the hat is the most adaptable part given its full metal nature and how it already kind of clashes with its set anyways.
Brutal.
The Royal Remain set is a gnarly armor that you can get fairly early in the game. It's outpaced by some other heavy armors later on, but in terms of design and lore regarding the Soulless King, it's too damn cool.
Awesome.
There isn't an NPC or invader associated with the ruler set, at least not in the game as we have it. It's really just there to look pretty. Like the Mariah's Mask, the Ruler's Mask gives a +1 faith buff, so that's a go-to piece if you really need that 1 point to wield a weapon or use a spell. So yeah, it's got that going for it.
Crazy.
The Sage's set is rather boring as an armor set. The scant amount of lore on it says the Sages were heretics, and the only person who wears it is Gowry, so did they worship Rot or something? I totally missed it in Stillwater Cave, and I'm not bothering to go get it.
Crazy.
The Scaled set is definitely a case of function over form. You get it by fighting Old Knight Istvan for the Volcano Manor questline, and it's a very solid set in terms of defense. You'll probably move away from it towards the endgame, but it can get you there if you want. Except for the helmet, I hate that helmet, it's so ugly!
Brutal.
The Snow Witch set is a clear indicator of a Rani simp. There's a strong chance that they're using the Royal Moonlight Sword and the Carrion Regal Scepter with it. They will spam a frost magic at you in hopes that it procs, and they probably are going to play very defensively. Oh, you wanted my opinion on the set? Well, yeah, it's cool looking. It sheds light on Rani's history and mentor. Plus, the hat buff is cool and makes a great wizard hat.
Awesome.
The Spellblade set can be obtained from Sorcerer Rogier after progressing the main game long enough. Once he dies in the Round Table hold, you have one of the best lightweight sets in the game. Each piece of the set buffs weapon skills that use magic or frost by 2%. Of course, the set looks great too. None of the pieces are bad in the least, though you are encouraged to use all of the set in order to get the full buff.
Awesome.
Geez, I forgot this set exists. You find it way too late in the game for it to be any good. The flavor isn't particularly gripping either, even if the implication is that they're another one of Millennia's progeny.
Crazy.
This is just a Finger Maiden set with a shawl. That's it, really.
Crazy.
Oh yeah, the twin set. You get it repeatedly when doing D and Fia's questline. It has respectable defenses, but is a tad heavy for its class. That said, just look at it. It's the Armor of the Embrace 2.0, man. The two bodies, one soul concept is hewn into the goddamn armor. The only place it suffers really is in adaptability. Only the head can really be worn with anything else, but I mean, why would you? The whole set's incomplete without all of it.
Brutal.
Like White Mask Vari, most of the War Surgeon set is lacking in punch, save for, of course, the mask. It's basically a miniature Lord of Blood's exaltation, which, of course, stacks with it. Expect to see this with bleed weapons like Rivers of Blood and just, in general, bleed spam. That said, you have to go out of your way to find it because I straight up missed it on my first playthrough.
Brutal.
Speaking of Rivers of Blood, next is the White Reed set that you get from fighting Okina, the wielder of said bleed katana. And I gotta say, it looks very cool. It's got that nice orange and purple palette going for it. The Okina mask is cool, and it goes with other samurai sets. It also gives a +3 to dexterity, but it lowers focus, which, let's be honest, is only important in a handful of situations anyways.
Brutal.
Oh yeah, I nearly forgot. There's that dress that Zaraya's human form wears. That's a thing, I guess. It's not that good. It's a heavy robe. That's it. It's just that best girl wears it. That's all.
Stylish.
These are the sets that you either get from bosses or you find after you beat them. Some of these are arguably not bosses because they show up later as mobs, but that tends to happen in FromSoft games, and Elden Ring is definitely not the exception. The Bloodhound Knight set is solid in its stats and flavor text. What holds it back is its appearance on the player character. The helmet looks ridiculous on them. When on actual Bloodhound Knights, they look fine because their bodies are actually made for the armor, whereas on anyone else, no. That said, the rest of the set goes well with a lot of other armor pieces, so just replace the helmet and you're good.
Brutal.
You can buy the Briar set from Enya after beating Elmer of the Briar. It's a solid, heavy knight set with good physical and fire resistance. But that's not all. It's the obligatory barbed armor set that lets your rolls deal damage to enemies per piece of the set. Its flavor is okay, but nothing too major, at least if you didn't know he wandered around hunting merchants prior to the Shaded Castle. Well, if you didn't, you'll know now.
Brutal.
There are two variants of the Crucible Knight armor sets. There's the Axe set, which you get from beating Ordovis at the Azuria Hero's Grave, and the other is the Crucible's Tree set that you get after fighting Siluria in the Deeproot Depths. Both sets are identical in stats, as those stats are pretty good given their weight, with massive physical and holy defenses. They both also buff Crucible incantations by 4% per worn piece, so they incentivize wearing the whole set, which is fitting given how their unique metal look clashes with most other sets.
Awesome.
The Duelist and Rotten Duelist sets are pretty hard to find since the Duelist enemies are more like rare mid to late game mobs than actual bosses. They have okay stats given their weight, with the Rotten variant having higher resistances than defense. They both have armor pieces that draw enemy aggro like Shiburi's Woe, so if you want to play a tank, put one of those pieces on and go to town.
Brutal.
The Elden Lord set, while good for its weight, is severely overshadowed by other armor this late in the game. Really, the set is there for swag and lore, which it has in spades. Also, the headpiece is just straight up Godfrey's hair, and I love it.
Brutal.
The Fell Omen Cloak is a piece of armor you can buy from Enya after beating Morgott. It's about average for a heavy robe. It's really there for flavor text, and you compare it with other sets like Goldenest to make it a ruddy monk set. It's not bad, but it's not great either.
Brutal.
Okay, Vike invades you once, but when you get the fingerprint set from the Everjail fight, he's a boss. So that's where he is in my book. The fingerprint set is comparable to other knight sets in stats. Where it shines is its flavor text, which is amazing. It reveals that Vike almost became Elden Lord, but he was corrupted by the frenzied flame and embraced by the three fingers, armor and all. Then he failed and wound up in the Everjail.
Awesome.
Ah, yes, the Resident Giga Chad General Radon set. It's stylish and filled with Radon's characterization about how he looked up to both Radigan and Godfrey. The set has very good defense and resistances, but is one of the earliest super heavy sets you can get, so you will need to put a lot of points in endurance, or use the best arsenal charm you have. While it looks cool, it's not exactly the most practical piece of armor out there.
Awesome.
You get the Godskin Apostle set by fighting the one at the bottom of the Divine Tower of Kaled. The Godskins have a very striking design to them, and the Apostle set has to be one of my favorite pieces. I love the jewel at the base of the hood and how different scraps of skin make up this highly morbid set. In terms of function, the set is a lot like a robe with low physical defense but high energy defense. It does have a suspiciously high vitality to it, though.
Brutal.
The Godskin Noble set is somewhat of a downgrade to the Apostle set, in my opinion. Ironically, their lore makes them out to be better than the Apostles, so why is this armor worse? It has less defense, a bit more poise, and all you get is a buff to a single incantation that's situational at best. It would have been better if they buffed all the other Black Flame incantations instead.
Crazy.
Like his brother, Moog has a chest piece that can be bought from Enya after beating him. The Lord of Blood's robe has the most protection among the heavy robes at the cost of being, well, heavier than the rest. However, it can be paired with a few other sets to improve its lack of other pieces. Anything black or gold goes well with it.
Awesome.
Like the Elden Lord set, Millennia's set is another one designed for appearance over the fence. Though you could probably get a light roll out of it if you have enough carry weight. Design and lore-wise, her set paints a picture of how she defended her brother that helped her deal with her curse. The gauntlet and legs are basically prosthetics, and her helmet hides her fungus-covered eyes. Of course, most of the set is meant to be completed, but you can get some good mileage out of the helm for other sets.
Awesome.
The Malformed Dragon set is dropped by the Draconic Tree Sentinel in Farum Azula. The set is another heavy set, but its defense isn't as good as some of the other armor in its weight class, save for its lightning defense. As much as I like the idea behind the armor, I don't really like the design of it. It almost clashes with itself in some places, never mind other armor. Malekith's set, on the other hand, has to be one of my favorite armors in the game. The black and gold look is great. The plume of gray hair on the helm is amazing. Not to mention the stats, which are a bit above average, at least as far as its weight class is considered, but it is on the heavier side. Of course, the flavor is about how Malekith was feared for possessing the Rune of Death, and how it was sealed with him at Marika's behest.
Awesome.
Oh, look at that! Another black armor set that I really like! Getting the Knight's Cavalry set is a pain because it's in the consecrated snowfield, guarded by two of these guys. None of its defenses are under 20, and its poise is nothing to sneeze at either. It's an endgame set for players who want knight armor without going into the really heavy sets. Plus, you know how I feel about black armor sets at this point. Yeah, easy A.
Awesome.
Queen Renala's set is a very good lightweight robe with high magic defense. Of course, for everyone else, the only thing that's good about it is the hat due to its +3 intelligence buff with no drawbacks. So basically, it's the go-to sorcerer hat. Its flavor text details Renala's fall from the Academy's graces after Radigan went off to join Marika. Or became Marika. I don't know, that's a little vague. Elden Ring lore is weird.
Awesome.
Another heavy knight set that I really like, the Royal Knight armor, is really good for its weight, and it should be. You can buy it from Enya after beating Loretta in the Haley Tree, making this a late game set. Its flavor text all but outright states that she's an Albinuric, and explains why the hell she's there in the first place. Its unique metal treatment does make it clash with certain armors, but that didn't stop me from picking a different helmet.
Awesome!
The Sanguine Noble's set looks really cool. It's super light and has more in common with a robe than armor, but it's really lightweight, makes it redeemable for certain builds. Its flavor is okay, but doesn't really cover that much beyond the basic information on the faction.
Brutal!
The Tree Sentinel set, for everyone who got their head caved in by the first Sentinel and said, I really like that armor. It's another set found in Azuria Hero's Grave. It's among the heavy armor sets, but the stats more than make up for it. It has very good defenses in general, but it particularly has exceptional fire damage for some reason. Sadly, the flavor is kind of mid. I mean, we know that the Tree Sentinels are important soldiers within the Erd Tree, and that their theme is, of course, based around said tree. We know. We get it. I just wish that there was a little bit more to the flavor text.
Awesome!
The Veteran set is another armor that you can buy from Enya after beating Commander Niall at Castle Sol. This bulky set used to be the meta set, but now the Tree Sentinel is the better heavy armor than this. Plus, the helm and chest piece really clash with other armor sets. You can sort of get away with the legs and gauntlets, but it really doesn't play well with other armors.
Brutal!
Last, we have the Zammer set. As you can probably guess, I didn't get it because you have to go through the Giant Conquering Hero's Grave to get at it. It looks cool and has some interesting lore about a lesser-known faction, but I don't think it's worth the trip in there. Yeah, sure, you could easily swap out the arm and leg wraps, but there are just better sets out there. Kind of a pity, really. It kind of looks cool, but it's just not worth it, man.
Brutal!
Last but not least are the headpieces that don't actually have any sets tied to them. Most have some sort of effect and are more notable for that than actual stats. There are quite a few that drop from enemies, so there are good chances I don't have those. The Black Dumpling can be dropped by those pesky mad Albinurics in Volcano Manor. Its claim to fame is the 10% damage buff after you proc Madness on yourself. So basically, if you're using Madness builds, go with this. The helm itself is awful looking, but the flavor text is downright horrifying. An interesting piece.
Brutal!
Blackguard's Iron Mask is more like a variant of the Prisoner's Mask, considering it's paired with the prisoner clothes. It has comparable defense to it, but not much else, and considering I didn't do the Dung Eater questline, I don't have it, because Blackguard's just an okay guy. I mean, he doesn't deserve to die to freaking Dung Eater. Good lord.
Crazy!
The Scarab line of headpieces are a line of helms that provide talisman effects, but increase damage taken. More often than not, I just opt for using the talisman version of the effect. Chances are, if you need to buff your Crimson Tear Flask, you have enough health to not get one shot. The only question is if you're willing to take that extra bit of damage for more healing.
Brutal!
You will rarely need to buff your Cerulean Tear Flasks unless you are pumping your mind like crazy. Don't even bother with it.
Crazy!
I didn't know the Scarab existed, but this one actually can be useful when using weapons that have powerful Ashes of War, like Bolt of Grandsax or the Ruins Greatsword. Stacking it with a Carrion Filigree crest is a no-brainer if you don't mind the defense penalty.
Brutal!
While one would think the Glintstone Scarab would be just like the Ash of War one, keep in mind that the Primal Glintstone Blade also penalizes your defense, so stacking the two is a fast way of getting yourself one shot.
Crazy!
This is basically the Glintstone Scarab for Faith builds. The only difference is that there is no equivalent for incantations, so yeah, this is actually worth more.
Brutal!
The Embeds are a collection of difficult-to-find helms that can be found in really out-of-the-way places or dropped from imps. Each type gives you a +2 to a different stat, save for Mind or Vitality, which already have other headpieces that buff those.
Brutal.
Eiji's mirror helm is more of a lore piece than an actual armor piece. Eiji seemed like an interesting character, and it's a pity we only have this and a scant amount of lines shared with him. There's also a Nox version of it, but it lacks the lore behind it, so
Crazy.
The Jar Helm is a symbol of friendship given to you by Alexander as part of his quest. Its boost to pot items stacks with the companion Jar Talisman, but that's not the real reason why it gets used. It's the helm of a hero that some have had the honor of witnessing. Let me solo her. The legendary player who co-ops to beat Millennia for those who are struggling to fight her. He's a legend that's honored throughout the Reddits with his helm. I mean, yeah, it's pretty iconic for people who are using it.
Stylish.
Next is the Pumpkin Helm, which is a heavy crown with good defense that protects from headshots. It's practical if a bit situational. It's another one of those goofy headpieces, so you'll likely see it on naked fast rollers rather than with a full-on set.
Crazy.
The Envoy Crown is a powerful but specific headpiece that is part of some of the most incredible builds out there. The crown boosts skills that use bubble attacks, but not spells. These are mainly attacks used by the 3 Envoy Horns. Though the particularly busted weapon in this case is the Envoy Longhorn that is a well-known boss shredder to just about everything. Even the wholly resistant bosses still have trouble dealing with it due to how many attacks it does and how it can break posture easily.
Awesome.
The octopus head randomly drops from the land octopuses scattered throughout the lands between. It has really good strike defense, but not much else going for it.
Crazy.
After fighting the Mimic Tier in Nokron, you get the Silver Tier Mask. Its claim to fame is the massive +8 buff to Arcane, which is offset by a 5% penalty to your attack rating. While it can help you qualify for certain incantations and weapons, its main use is to raise your item discovery when grinding for certain drops, and it's invaluable for making videos like this.
Awesome.
Last but simply not least is the Great Helm, the most versatile helmet in the game. It fits any surcoat, almost any knight armor, and even some heavy sets. It has some very good physical defense, with the only downside being its above average weight. But by the mid-game, you should be able to wear it without much issue. Great for Solaire cosplayers as well.
Stylish.
You thought I forgot about it, didn't you? How could I forget about one of the most important groups in Elden Ring lore? The Black Knives. Newman women who were close to Marika. On that fateful night, they killed Godwin and etched the half-wheel of death into his skin. These legendary assassins can be found in odd corners of the lands between, but you ultimately find this set on a corpse underneath a staircase at the liturgical town in the consecrated snowfield, so it is very much hidden. For good reason. The set itself is made of a dark leather covered by a spectral shawl. This shawl functions as the assassin's approach incantation, silencing the wearer's footsteps. Couple that with a hidden body sorcery, and you'll be able to sneak past most things unless you jump out right in front of them. Stat-wise, it has okay defenses, but you're playing a Black Knife, so you really shouldn't have to worry about defense that much. It's probably one of my favorite sets in the game, and overall, it's just cool. That said, you're gonna have a hard time mixing it. Only certain pieces work with the spectral hood, and it's made of a unique material that mixes well with only a few sets. But again, super cool set, and I don't use it nearly as much as I should.
Stylish.
That should be all of them. If I missed one of them, I'm sure somebody will tell me, or argue about how one should be way higher, but here's an idea. Why not comment your favorite armor combinations? What worked for you, and why? The fact that I'm several playthroughs into Elden Ring and still trying out new combinations of armor and weapons speaks to just how robust the build systems are. There are so many viable character builds in this game that it's staggering. What's more, the world that From Software and George R.R. Martin created feels very lived in. That's something I can say for only a handful of games out there that I've even played. If you like this video, please subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. I've got another project cooking, and if this video does well, I might do another one for Elden Ring weapons. I'll see you all next time on Design Dungeon.